Proverbs chapter 21, and there's 22 characteristics here of the virtuous woman. 22 characteristics, and you ladies know that doesn't that just this is just given kind of like an outline. Doesn't cover it all. Definitely doesn't cover all that a godly mother and wife does, but it gives an idea and things to praise God for. And this is it is also God's example to follow for mothers and wives, but it's not in any way all-inclusive or you might have different strengths and gifts that the Lord has given you that aren't covered in Proverbs 21. Definitely, there's a lot of things about motherhood and all that goes into caring for those little ones, which is a 24-hour-a-day job, such a huge job. And a lot of that's not mentioned here, but this is mentioned so many great things, and it is praised. The passage ends with that a virtuous woman is so worthy to be praised, and give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Sad thing today, as society turns away from God. Yesterday I preached, and thank you for your prayers down in Auburn. It was Ted Greyton's stepmother, and the story is that when Ted was like 7 years old, his father, and I don't know whether his mother, I'm not sure what happened, but anyway, his father was a single father with 6 children. 6 children. And his stepmother's husband had passed away. And she used to know Ted's father at school, and she liked him at school. So she knew his father had a car garage, and she needed her car worked on. So she made an appointment at his garage, and then it was all, she planned it all, go talk to him about her car, and they were married. She just passed away, 93 years old. Well, she passed away earlier, but spring's coming, and there's a lot of burials taking place now. But she was 93 years old, so she married. She had one son for her first marriage, and like I said, her husband passed away. And then she married, so she had 7 children to take care of, just like that. And her sister-in-law was there. I was talking to her sister-in-law, who's in her 80s, and she was saying she was her name was Ruth, was so wonderful to those children, just so wonderful. She said after they got married, they were married because she married my brother, and I was talking to the kids. And she said, because the kids were 7 to 17 years old. 7 to 17 years old. And she said, I was talking to a couple of the older boys, and they were like, they were just like, we can't believe it. We can't believe it. We have clean clothes. We come in. She said, I was talking to one of the boys. He said, I came home from school, and my clothes were on my dresser, all clean and folded up. And she said, he said, we get home cooked meals. And just this woman was quite a story to step into that position. And all the stepchildren were talking about how she loved us as her own children. And it was an honor to be able to do that funeral. And we're going to look at the virtuous woman, and we said there's 22 characteristics because this is an acrostic according to the Hebrew alphabet. So each verse is given, it would have started in each letter of the Hebrew alphabet, worked its way down through the alphabet. So, first characteristic, we're going to jump right in. We did an introduction last week, so just jumping right in verse 10 where it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." Far above rubies. I think of that family, those 7 kids, six of the kids there that hadn't had a mother for some time, and their testimonies of how wonderful it was. You can't put a price on a mother. Just can't put a price on a mother. Her price far above rubies. Now the first characteristic here, we're going to try to get these this morning. So I can't elaborate. I can't elaborate a lot if we're going to do 22 characteristics. We better get going. Number 1 is she's just hard to find. She's rare. So you young boys out there or young men like Elijah, you better start praying. You want a godly woman. If you know the Lord Jesus as your Savior, I know Elijah's given testimony. He's received the Lord. You want to start praying. You don't want just a girl that you run into at school, work. You want to find a girl, probably at church, and no doubt one that loves the Lord, fears God. All 22 of these characteristics, they flow out of her fear for God. It builds up to a climax in verse 30 where it says, "But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised, because she loves God and respects God and wants God's ways." She's this kind of woman. And you young men, you want to pray. You want to start praying. I remember when I was in 2nd grade, and Mrs. Viles, my teacher, asked the class, she said, "What are you going to be doing in the year 2000? Well, in the year 2000, I'd be 36 years old, and I'm only like 8 years old, 9 years old, sitting in class. And I said, what will I be doing in the year 2000? I can't remember. I can't believe that 2000 is already 21 years ago. But I remember when I was 8 years old thinking, I want a good wife. Can you believe that? I want a good wife and I want children. And God fulfilled my dreams. But you want to pray. You want to pray for the right mate because they are hard to find. Secondly, it says, "The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil." He doesn't have to go out and fight any battles, bring home any spoil. He's content because he has a good woman. And so number 2, we're going to say she can be trusted. She can be trusted. And that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. I can't imagine a man that has to wonder what his wife is up to, what she's doing, where does she go. To have a godly woman that can be trusted is such a gift from God. And the heart of her husband does safely trust in her. Then, number three, she makes it her goal to please her husband. She makes it her goal to please her husband. The world says that's ridiculous. That's strange. That's weird. You know, the modern conception of the independent woman who stands alone, engaged in her own business, her own profession, her own career, is not what this virtuous woman's all about. The world doesn't understand this. All these characteristics, the wife, the mother, is given to her family. She's given to her home. She's going to make her home a home. It's going to be home sweet home, not home nightmare, fighting and just over the years, especially youth ministry, I've heard. I remember one time I was taking a kid home after youth group, and this was like a 12-year-old boy who said, "I don't want to go home. Don't take me home. I don't want to go home." And because I had to take the boy home, and when I went to the door with this boy, one of the reasons why he was saying, "Don't take me home," he had gotten in trouble. He had gotten in trouble at youth group, so I was going to tell the parents when I took him home. But I went to the door, and they opened the door, and there's the marijuana just rolled out the door, and because it was his father and his girlfriend, it's just a total mess, which is like that has become common. That is not just a rare instance anymore. Maybe 40 years ago it was, but it's become so common. And to find a virtuous woman whose priority is her home, not her career, not herself, not looking out for number one, not going to find herself and make her way, even if it means leaving her family, leaving her children. These verses, even though this virtuous woman does so many different things, and even goes out into the world and works to. I believe if a woman's going to work out, it is to build up her family, not to tear down her family. It's going to be to put her family first, not to make them last on the list. It's going to be I think if it's a few hours here, a few hours there, it's still all going to work together for the good of the family. And that's what you see in this passage is her husband is her number one priority. Her children are her priority. And her love for God makes it that way. And so her priority, she wants to do her husband good and not evil all the days of her life. She makes it her goal to please her husband. Number four, verse 13. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. That doesn't mean you have to go get some sheep or start growing flax. The principle here is that she works. She is a worker. She's a worker. And a virtuous woman's going to be a worker. And she's going to do a variety of work, I should say. I always think of this woman I knew that was very faithful to church. That you go by her house, and she'd always be sitting in her chair knitting. Oh, she's so busy knitting. The whole house is falling down around her. And I'm not kidding. They actually condemned. That house was condemned. And it was just a little path through the house. She might think in her mind she was keeping busy, but she wasn't doing a variety of different things like the Bible example here is. Such a variety of different things for a wife and mother to do. There's so many things. And she's going to look for work and different kinds of work and do different jobs. And she was knitting while you could have taken a shovel. You could have taken a shovel and shoveled the dirt off the floor. Anyway, you know that as you read through this passage, and we started this to honor mothers, But there's many mothers today that are not worthy to be honored. That's just the truth. Many mothers today not worthy to be honored, that have neglected their children, that have neglected and even come to despise their husbands and leave their husbands. But the women that are faithful to the Lord and faithful to their family, especially in our day, maybe more than in any time in history, are so worthy to be praised. If you've got a good woman, if you've got a good wife or a good mother, they are so worthy to be praised. Just That's your job, Dad, or that's your job, husband, or that's your job, young men. Praise your mother, honor your mother, because we live in a day where everything is pulling mom away from the home, and Satan is walking about as a roaring lion to destroy the home. And here's an example of what a virtuous woman should be and should be doing. And these are things you think, moms, wives, as you're working away doing these little things in your home. And I should say, you might slow down some. You're gonna slow down some as you get older. We know how hard you've worked over the years. It shows. It shows. And don't let that discourage you. You do what you can. You do what you can. But what did I start to say? I was going to say that, God mentions all these things, gives this list of so many little details, because God notices the details. God notices the details of. God notices that if a mother is, getting up and doing things for the good of her family and all the little things that nobody else might see, God notices all those things. Like God wrote them down, and they're important to God. And the world might think that, you mean you don't work? You mean you just stay at home and care for the kids? Yeah. God knows that you do work, and God knows that you love those kids, and you pour your life into those kids, and they're everything to you, and that you love, and you do that all because you love God. And God takes the notes. God takes the notes. God knows. We gotta get going here. So number 4, she looks for work. Number 5, from verse 14, where it says, she is like the merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She looks for deals. She looks for deals. When I was going to college in Pensacola, I had a job off campus. I cleaned this guy's house. He was a merchant marine. He had been gone for several months. His whole house, because it's so moist, humid, his whole house, all the walls are black mold. I had to go in there and wash. But he was showing me all these things that I got this in Japan. I got these in China. I got all these ornamental, fancy things, and I got this. It's a lot stuff he's getting for next to nothing, or just getting really, really cheap that he could turn around and sell it for a greater price. Well, a wise woman, she's like that merchant ship. She's going to find good deals. She's going to look for good deals and, find like $200 dresses at Martin's for 99 cents. Can you do that? My wife's done that. Yeah. You saw some of you, I brought out my overcoat, my black wool overcoat that was originally $185 for $2 at Martin's. Gotta love that. Gotta love that. But a good woman is like a merchant ship. she looks for deals. Number 6, she fixes meals. She fixes meals. Verse 15, it says, she riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She is up and cooking and preparing, and I think again of that teenage boy saying, we're getting home cooked meals. We're getting meals. She makes all this great food. Well, that's a huge blessing. It's a huge blessing. It's a blessing the minute the husband walks in the door at the end of the day and smells that food. It's like invigorating. And a good woman, a virtuous woman, she fixes meals. Then number seven, she considers her family's needs. In verse 16, it says, she considereth the field and buyeth it. So we're trying to stress that because most of you ladies aren't going to go into real estate. This isn't saying you ladies need to go into real estate. This is just giving an example of a woman that is thinking of things that she can do to build her home and to please her husband and to be a blessing. And so here, this is quite a woman. She's in real estate. She considereth the field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. So she's also planting a garden, a vineyard. Vineyards in Bible days would be like something like a little garden like out here. But they'd also have fruit trees and grapevines, and it was a place of relaxation. I remember Ahab wanted Naboth's vineyard, and must have just been a beautiful spot that he coveted after. But the picture here is that she considers her family's needs and does anything she can to build up her household. Number 8, verse 17, she girdeth the loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. This lady that I did the service for yesterday, it said she worked with her first husband out in the woods, and she and him did the crossbow together, the crossbow saw. She and him were the sawers. Well, I don't know, man. You just decide you don't want to work your woman into the ground. But it does say that, I mean, she is a go-getter. And it implies here that, did I say number 8? What's in the principle here, number 8 is she uses all her might. She uses all her might. We know Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Colossians 3:23, whatsoever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men. And here's a woman that just pours her strength into what she does. Pours her strength. I read this passage, and I think of different ones. I think of Mildred Crocker, and how she used to. I went to visit her one time when she still lived at home. I remember saying something that she said something like, "I don't live alone. The Lord is with me." She said that to me. But I went in there, she was, this is right before she went to Colonial. She may have turned 100, I'm not sure, or it was close to it. And she was baking something, and because the house was so clean, I think of Avis. Avis was just like that also. I remember going in. Avis was 98 years old, and she had on her refrigerator her list of exercises. And man alive, so one of her exercises was take 10 steps backwards. Take 10 steps backward. I thought, why did they tell her to do that? That scared me. But so in her on her counter in her kitchen, she would hold the counter. Got to keep moving. But it's that kind of attitude. I'd say the old timers had that kind of attitude. You do everything you can, and you're doing it for the Lord, for the glory of the Lord, and you do it with all your might. Man alive. It's all about self. It's all about one. God help our country. God help our children, our families, because a virtuous woman, if it was hard to find in Solomon's day, it is so much harder to find today. So much harder. She uses all her might. Look in verse 18. It says, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good. That word perceiveth is... it's like she sees that it also implies like that when I look this up in my phone and I push my definition there in Strong's, she perceives by taste. I thought that's interesting. She perceives by taste. Well, you got some white substance on the counter and you put your finger in there. Is that sugar or is that salt? You perceive by taste. Is that sweet? Is that sour? You perceive by taste. And she perceives it like she has a taste for the things God has given to her. She is thankful. She is content for what God has given to her. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. Just another thing saying that she works. She works so hard. But she is content with what she has and takes care of it. She's not a waster. And just thankful for what they have. And I was thinking of the Woodards. The Woodards had a nice house out in Prentice. Probably a lot of you saw the Woodards house. I mean, not elaborate, but a pretty house, and he kept everything mowed and painted nice. Had that great big yard, and then they moved to Turner, and I was surprised when I went to visit them. It's just a little old mobile home. It's just a little like we're talking like the metal siding, probably a 50s mobile home. Some of you have seen that little mobile home. And when I was there visiting, Mr. Wood is just so content. So content. You could say that they perceive that their merchandise is good. Doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be fancy. They were really, making a big change when they left that pretty house up there. But it's neat and it's clean, and it's a perception that this is what God has given to me, and it's all about serving God. It's all about living for God, following God. And some people and some women, whatever their husbands do for them, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You know that. Interrupt myself. I'm never going to make it. I never make it. I'm never going to make it. All 22 of these. I'm on number 9. Anyway, let's keep going. You knew I wouldn't make it, didn't you, Carly? Yeah. He always looks at me like, yeah. Well, anyway. Do you remember way back around New Year's, I said, we're going to do a series. I was trying to make it brief and simple, but a series on socialism. Anybody ever remember I mentioned that? It's still on the list. Still on the list. Shh. But anyway, that if I slow down and say I'm not going to make it through, then I think when I think of this verse, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good. I just think things like what we're saying is to be thankful for what you've got, to appreciate it, to take care of it. It might not be the biggest, greatest thing, but in your mind, this is what God has given to us. Going to take care of it and be content, be happy. I remember when we made our move years ago, we had a mobile home. We had all 4 daughters in this little bedroom in our mobile home. I made bunk beds out of crib mattresses so I could fit all 4 girls in that little room there. And then we were buying our house in Peru, which had 11 rooms, and it had work to be done to it, but I was all excited about that house. But I remember my wife saying, I hate to see our mobile home go. Had so many great memories in that mobile home. But it wasn't like, I'm so sick of this place. I'm so glad to get out of this, this little thing. And what a blessing a wife and mother that perceives her merchandise is good. This is what God's given me. I'm happy. It doesn't have to be much. She perceives that her merchandise is good. She's content with what she has. Verse 19. Number 10 says, she layeth her hands to the spindle. You don't have to, once again, you don't have to go out and take spinning woolen to thread or anything. I did read just in my Bible, my older Bible commentary there, Biblical Illustrator, it was mentioning that during the 1800s, that one of the prominent gifts for a new bride was a spindle. And a lot of times at the wedding, they would, the wedding percent, when they had the ladies would make their like a hope chest type things, preparing for their new home, and they would get married. And one of the things that they would try to get, or would be a gift at the wedding, that would be the prominent thing to be taken to the home, the new bride, would be a spindle. And it would be like put on display, because she's going to work. She's going to make her home. She's going to be a blessing to her home. This is exciting. We said that last week. We said this passage is really a mother's ministry. A mother's ministry. The home is a ministry. And the world doesn't look at it that way. For the world, the home is a misery. Really. So many times it's a misery. But for the Christian, the home should be a ministry. And so she's got her spindle, and her hands lay hold of distaff. She's just busy. She works. But it also said, because we already mentioned the point, she looks for work. The point here, number 10, would be she's crafty. She's talented. She's skilled. And, young bride can get married and not have a whole lot of skills in cooking or even cleaning, but time to start and trust the Lord, look to the Lord, and start learning, and don't have the attitude, well, I can't do that, I'll never be able to do that. Just keep learning and growing, and God's example here is that a virtuous woman is going to be skilled in just a huge blessing, a huge blessing. She's crafty, talented, and skilled. I like how, do you notice in these passages, at verse 19, she layeth her hands to the spindle. Her hands take hold of the distaff. Verse 20, she stretcheth out her hands. The end of the verse, she reacheth forth her hands. Turn over to Psalm 90. Psalm 90. Verse 17. I read this passage at Avis Noy's homegoing. Psalm 90, verse 17 says, Let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it. That's what the virtuous woman does. It's like God has got a hold of her hands. She's using her hands to be a blessing to her home, her husband, and just busy, busy, busy. Back to verse 20. Verse 20. We'll stop on verse 20. But where it says, she stretcheth out her hand to the poor. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. I looked that up again, and interesting. It says she stretcheth out her hand. It implies that she's stretching her hands out, palms up. Now, who would have ever thought of that? She stretches out her hands, palms up, and it's stressing that when she stretches out her hands, it's the hollow of her hands are open. And it goes right into that, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. So when she's stretching out her hands, it's those open hands that she just has that attitude that always giving, always putting those hands forth, giving. What can I do for others? What can I bake for that family? Can I make a meal for them? Can I bring something over there and do that? What little gift can I do? It's just that tremendous attitude that makes her such a blessing. Such a blessing. We are going to stop there. So we got halfway, 11. We got 11. And I should say, as you go down through this passage, God never intended woman to be the servant of man. And God, really, for man, we are to be servants of God foremost. Ultimately, servants of God. And because we serve God, we serve men, because Jesus was a servant and said, I've given you the example. I've given you this example that you should do as I've done unto you. When he washed the disciples' feet, we're to be servants. Sometimes women will read this passage. Oh, I was going to say at the beginning of the message, I don't think I said, was that yesterday at the funeral, I said, in honor of what I've read and been told about your stepmother, I want to read Proverbs 31 about the virtuous woman. I said, are you familiar? And all these blank, just totally, there was the sister-in-law, I had already talked to her, and she knew Proverbs 31. She was excited that I was going to do that for her sister-in-law. But I got there was only about 30 people there at that service, but I got totally blank stares. Well, how can we have virtuous women today if they don't know what God says about the virtuous woman? It's not going to happen. at all these blank stares. Now, once again, I got going, and I was going to say something else there before I closed. I was saying about servant. So the world looks at this and says, oh, yeah, well, that's, a lot of the teenage girls today would say, well, that's, definitely nothing I want to do. That's not my interest. Well, yeah, the Lord has to save you, put that in your heart. Yes, to save and put that in their hearts. But it's serving the Lord, and therefore just having that servant's heart. We'll stop right there, and let's pray.